The piercing sound of air blocked in a throat echoed throughout the King County Superior Courtroom. On the 80-inch evidence screen, everyone was watching a 17-year-old girl writhing on the floor, clawing at her neck in desperation. That wasn't a horror movie, that was me, 19 years ago. The memories came rushing back, sharp and cruel. That night, my lungs felt like they were filled with concrete. 3 steps away from me stood Emily, dangling my life-saving inhaler like a cheap toy. "Breathe harder, loser." Her voice was ice cold, her lips curling into a satisfied smirk. Behind her, on the expensive leather sofa, my dad was still glued to the TV, and my mom was flipping to a new page of her fashion magazine. No one moved. They considered my dying struggle just an annoyance interrupting their perfect evening. I had to crawl across the carpet myself to find life in my battered old purse. That was the last time I considered them family. Currently, I am Sarah Bennett, 36 years old, CEO of a medical device empire in Seattle. I have money, power, and a life they know nothing about. I thought I had buried that night forever, until a subpoena tore through this fake peace. The collapse of an empire sometimes doesn't start with a loud explosion, but with the dry sound of tearing paper on a boring Tuesday afternoon. It was October 14th. I remember the exact date. Just like I remember the metallic taste in my mouth the night I almost died 19 years ago. I returned to my penthouse in Portland after a 6-hour shareholder meeting. My apartment is a true fortress, quiet, cold, surrounded by tempered glass and expensive abstract art. It's a space I painstakingly built to ensure no one, no noise, and no memory could invade. But on the kitchen counter, lying awkwardly among junk mail, was a thick envelope with a logo familiar enough to make me nauseous: King County Superior Court. My hands didn't shake. I've trained my hands never to shake, even when performing the most complex simulated surgeries on my company's equipment. I used a letter opener to slice it open cleanly. Inside was a subpoena. The legal text was dry but carried the weight of 1,000 pounds, ordering the presence of Ms. Sarah Bennett to testify in civil case number 24 CV0988. Emily Bennett Monroe versus Rachel Torres for defamation. The name Emily danced before my eyes like a ghost light. My sister, the one who stood watching me die slowly on the living room rug. Why did her lawsuit involve me? I didn't know who Rachel Torres was. I had never heard the name. For the past 19 years, I've been a ghost to the Bennett family. I changed my number, blocked every email, and even moved states to ensure our orbits never crossed. Yet now, the law, the coldest tool of all, was forcing me back into the black hole I had climbed out of with blood and tears. I should have called my lawyer immediately. I have a legal team ready to tear this subpoena apart or find a way to get me. I excuse due to health or distance. That would be the reaction of a rational CEO. But that night, the traumatized part of my memory won. I did what I had forbidden myself to do for nearly 2 decades. I opened my laptop and typed my sister's name into the search bar, along with that strange name, Rachel Torres. The blue screen light reflected on my face in the dark room. Search results flooded in. Rachel Torres wasn't a celebrity. She was a former marketing employee in Seattle who had been fired 3 months ago. And the center of the trouble lay in a post on Rachel's personal blog titled, "Escaping the Shark Tank: When Office Culture Becomes a Murder Weapon." I clicked on the article. Rachel's lines were like surgical scalpels, dissecting exactly the monster named Emily that I used to know. Rachel described in detail her time working under Emily. At first, it was fake sweet compliments, the deadly honey Emily always used to lure prey. Then came the isolation. Rachel talked about being accidentally left out of key meetings, ideas being blatantly stolen and presented under Emily's name in board meetings. Rachel wrote about the whispers, The baseless rumors about her competence spreading through the office, making colleagues look at her like she was incompetent and paranoid. It was an old script. Standard corporate cruelty, I told myself, about to close the laptop. Emily was still Emily, a narcissistic manipulator, craving attention and stepping on others to shine. But when I scrolled down near the end of the post, a bolded paragraph made my heart stop in my chest. Rachel wrote, "Emily Bennett isn't just a bad boss. She is a predator with a habit spanning decades. If you don't believe me, ask yourself why she never mentions her family. Ask her own sister what happened the night she couldn't breathe. Ask why an entire family spent 19 years of their lives on a single mission: to make sure no one believes her." I read that paragraph 3 times. The first time, I felt disbelief. The second time, I felt a chill run down my spine to my fingertips. The third time, I felt absolute horror. How? How did a stranger in Seattle know about that asthma attack? That was the Bennett family's darkest secret. My parents buried it. Emily laughed at it, and I ran from it. No one but the 4 people in that living room knew the truth. And that phrase, "to make sure no one believes her," it didn't feel like a casual accusation. It felt like the final piece of a puzzle I had tried not to look at for 19 years. It suggested that the isolation, the estrangement, me being labeled as the difficult daughter, paranoid, mentally unstable, all of that wasn't just random neglect or simple parental favoritism. It suggested a conspiracy, a coordination, a meticulously designed plan. I stood up, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the flickering city lights below. Memories flooded back uncontrollably. My 16th birthday, completely forgotten while Emily's birthday was a huge party. My college acceptance letter opened and thrown in the trash. The times Grandma called, but Mom said I wasn't home, even though I was sitting right there in the room. All these years, I thought I was just unlucky, the hated child. But tonight, the words of a stranger named Rachel Torres woke up a much more brutal truth. I wasn't forgotten. I was intentionally erased. And if Rachel knew this, it meant there was proof. I went back to the desk, staring at the subpoena. The initial fear was gone, replaced by an emotion colder and sharper: deadly curiosity. They want me in court to defend Emily's honor? Fine, I'll go to court. But I won't go empty-handed. I reached for my phone. It was time to call an old friend, the only person capable of digging up what had been buried under 19 years of lies. I sat silently in my apartment, the light from the laptop screen the only illumination, reflecting off the lifeless glass walls. The phrase from Rachel Torres's blog kept drilling into my mind: make sure no one believes her. That wasn't just an accusation. It was the decryption key to 19 years of my life. Before tonight, I always told myself a comforting story: that my family was simply thoughtless, that my mom was too busy with her social image, my dad was too weak, and Emily was just a spoiled brat. I believed their neglect was an accident of fate. I was the spare child, born at the wrong time. But Rachel Torres, a stranger, suggested a much more devastating scenario. My isolation wasn't accidental. It was by design. I closed my eyes, letting memories drift back to the old days, but this time I viewed them through a new lens. Scattered events suddenly connected in a terrifying way. I remembered my 16th birthday. That day, the house was eerily quiet. Mom said everyone was busy. No one remembered. I cried alone in my room, blaming myself for not being important enough to be remembered. But now, an auditory memory rushed back. I remembered faintly hearing Mom on the phone in the kitchen that morning. She told Aunt Claire, "Don't come over today. Sarah is going through a rebellious phase. She doesn't want to see anyone. We're punishing her." I wasn't rebellious. I was sitting upstairs waiting for a happy birthday that never came. She blocked love from our relatives right at the door. Then, the college acceptance letter. That year, I frantically searched for the acceptance letter from the University of Washington. It vanished without a trace. Mom insisted I must have failed and should consider community college or getting a job. Finally, I had to call admissions myself and found out I had been accepted. When I asked Mom, she just shrugged, saying the post office must have lost it. But how could the post office lose the single most important letter, while her fashion magazines and Emily's party invitations never arrived a day late? And the most painful one, Grandma Margaret. She was the only one who stroked my hair, the only one who looked at me with warmth. But then the calls became infrequent. Mom said Grandma was sick, tired, didn't want to talk on the phone. Mom said Grandma was disappointed because I was lazy. I believed it. I believed I was her disappointment. But if Rachel was right, what if Mom blocked all my calls? What if she told Grandma lies about me, just like she did with Aunt Claire? A cold truth wrapped around me. They didn't just neglect me. They actively built a quarantine wall around me, turning me into a deserted island in the middle of the ocean, cutting off all emotional, financial, and social supplies. They needed me weak. They needed me alone. And most importantly, they needed me to be unreliable in the eyes of others. Why? What was the motive? Pure cruelty or something more practical? I opened my eyes. The anger didn't make me hot. On the contrary, it made me freeze. I was no longer the 17-year-old girl gasping for air on the floor. I was Sarah Bennett, who negotiated million-dollar deals, who knew how to see through the most ruthless business strategies. And my family just made a fatal mistake. They thought I was still a victim. They dragged me to court to be a witness for Emily. Fine. I will bring them a witness they never expected. I picked up my phone, fingers scrolling through contacts, stopping at a name I hadn't called in years, but kept in touch with via short birthday texts: Erica Lawson. Back in the day, Erica was the target of bullies in high school. She was chubby, wore thick glasses, and always walked with her head down near the wall. I was the only one who sat with her at lunch when the whole cafeteria treated her like a plague. I couldn't stop them from teasing Erica, but I made sure she didn't have to endure it alone. Now, Erica is one of the top digital forensics experts in Portland. Her job is recovering what people think is deleted forever: affair messages, embezzled data, dark secrets in smashed hard drives. I hit call. It rang twice. Sarah? Erica's voice rang out, surprised but warm. It's been so long. Is something wrong? You sound strange. Erica? I said, my voice so calm it surprised even me. I need your help. I need you to dig up a grave. I briefly told her about the subpoena, Rachel's blog, and my suspicions. Erica listened in silence, not interrupting once. When I finished, the sound of typing clattered on the other end. I've been waiting for this day for 20 years, Sarah, Erica said, her voice hardening, sharp as a scalpel. Bring all the old electronics you have here, hard drives, cameras, old phones, anything you kept from that house. I hung up, walked to the closet where I kept a small cardboard box taped shut. It was the only luggage I took when I left home at 18. Inside wasn't much. Some old clothes, a notebook, and an item I never dared to touch for nearly 2 decades. A DVD in a paper sleeve. On the face of the disc was Emily's. Neat handwriting in pink highlighter, Family Memories, 2006. The year 2006. The year Dad bought the most modern handheld camcorder at the time. Emily was obsessed with it, filming everything, from breakfast to her cruel pranks. I stole this disc from her computer desk before I left, an impulsive act I didn't understand myself. Maybe subconsciously, I knew it held something important. I picked up the disc. It was light, but I felt the weight of an entire verdict in my hand. "All right, Emily," I whispered to the empty space. "You want me to testify? I'll show you exactly what I remember." Erica's office was located in an old brick building in the Pearl District, where old industrial warehouses were renovated into workspaces for the tech elite. Outside, it was raining. Portland's specialty, persistent and bone-chilling, washing over the gray streets. I pulled my coat collar up, walking quickly through puddles reflecting neon lights into the lobby. Erica met me at the door. She was no longer the shy, overweight 10th grader who hid in the bathroom to eat lunch. The current Erica was sharp, short hair, eyes behind titanium frames radiating intelligence, and the determination of someone who hunts for truths others want hidden. "You look the same," Erica said, not as a social compliment but an observation. "Cold. Controlled. But I see the exhaustion in your eyes, Sarah." "I need help." I handed her the DVD wrapped in an anti-static bag. "I need to know what's on this, besides silly birthday footage." Erica's workspace looked more like an operating room than an IT office. Monitors lined up, cooling fans whirring like the breathing of a sleeping beast. She put on gloves, holding the disc under a specialized light. "The surface is pretty scratched." She squinted. "The reflective layer has started oxidizing at the edges." "Sarah, this disc is almost 20 years old. Digital data isn't as eternal as people think. It rots, just like memories." My heart tightened. If this disc was corrupted, my only link to the truth would be severed. Erica inserted the disc into a specialized drive. The motor whined, sounding piercing like nails on a chalkboard. On the main screen, a status bar began to run. 1%, 3%. Then it froze. The room fell into silence. I held my breath, hands gripping the chair arms. We sat there for nearly 5 minutes, staring at the spinning cursor. The waiting was more torturous than knowing failure in advance. "Okay," Erica muttered, quickly typing a string of commands. "It's trying to skip bad sectors. Come on." The drive noise softened to a steady hum. The status bar jumped to 100%. A folder window popped open. "We're in." Erica exhaled. She clicked on the first video file. It was typical shaky footage from a 2000s handheld camcorder. Scenes of a backyard BBQ, Emily blowing out candles. But I told Erica to fast forward. I needed to find November 17th, 2006. And then it appeared. The image on the screen was painfully sharp, low angle, placed on the floor. In the frame was me, young, skinny, thrashing like a fish out of water. The wheezing sound, raspy, desperate. And then that voice rang out from the high-quality monitor speakers, clear as if Emily were standing right in the room. "Look at her. She looks like a pufferfish. Mom, look at her face turning purple." The camera panned to the sofa. My mom, Patricia, still casually flipping through her magazine, simply dropped a careless remark without looking up. "Emily, stop teasing your sister. And Sarah, stop being so dramatic. It's too noisy." Erica paused the video. She turned to look at me, her face pale with horror. "Oh my God, Sarah. I knew they were bad, but I didn't think they left you to die." I didn't cry. I stared at the frozen image of myself dying on the screen. I didn't die. I lived to drag them into the light today. But this is just a video. The court could say it was a childish prank gone too far. We need more. Erica turned back to the screen, eyes narrowing with suspicion. She switched to the interface displaying raw data structure, Hex Viewer. "Wait," she said, her tone changing. "Look at this file size. This video is only 400 megabyte, but this disk holds 4 gigabyte of data. What is the rest?" She worked quickly, opening hidden folders that a normal operating system wouldn't show. Emily used an old version of Nero burning ROM software. Erica explained fast, fingers dancing on the keyboard. Back then, this software had a UI design flaw. If you chose Data Backup instead of Make Movie Disk, it would default to selecting the current user's root folder if they didn't uncheck it. Emily was 14. She knew nothing about file management. A new folder appeared. The folder name was Outlook Express Backup, Pat and M. I felt my blood freeze. It wasn't just a video. Emily, in her stupidity and laziness, had accidentally copied my mom's and her entire email archive onto this disk. Erica opened the file with a mail recovery tool. Thousands of emails appeared. Subject, date, sender, recipient. Everything was there. Search for keyword Sarah, I commanded, voice hoarse. Results returned hundreds of emails. Erica opened one sent just 2 days after my asthma attack. Sender: Patricia Bennett, Mom. Recipient: Emily Bennett. Subject: Grandma Matter. Dearest Emily, I spoke to Grandma Margaret. I told her Sarah refused to come to the phone because she's sulking about not getting a new car. She seemed very disappointed. Good job, daughter. Remember to delete the video in the camera. Don't let Dad see it. He'll get soft again. We need to ensure she focuses her attention on you for this coming Christmas. Her trust fund is the only thing that matters right now. The cold room suddenly felt suffocating. Erica turned to me, mouth agape. They didn't hate you, Sarah, Erica whispered, voice trembling. This isn't hate. This is a heist. They plan to rob your inheritance since you were 16. I looked at the words, her trust fund. Everything suddenly became clear. My invisibility had a cash value. And now, I held their receipt. With a hard drive full of cruel emails from Mom and Emily safely in my bag, I left Erica's office. But those ones and zeros, while damning evidence, lacked one thing: a living witness and context. I needed to understand why a stranger like Rachel Torres knew things even I had just discovered. I found Rachel's phone number in the public court filings. She agreed to meet me immediately, her voice on the phone shaking but unable to hide the relief, as if she had been waiting for this call for a long time. We met at a small coffee shop tucked in an old brick alley in Pioneer Square, Seattle. Rachel was younger than I imagined, early 30s, but the dark circles under her eyes and slumped shoulders showed the cost of daring to stand up against Emily. The defamation lawsuit had drained her vitality and finances. When I walked in, Rachel recognized me immediately, perhaps because Emily and I share features, even though I loathed that fact. She stood up, hands clutching a paper coffee cup like a shield. Ms. Bennett, Rachel said, voice hoarse, I'm sorry for dragging your family matters onto the internet, but I had no other choice. Your sister, she destroyed my life. I sat down opposite her, placing my phone face down on the table. I didn't come here to accuse you, Rachel. I came because of the last sentence in your article. How do you know about my grandmother? Rachel sighed, her shoulders dropping a bit. She opened her bag and took out an old black and white photo. In the photo were 2 young women smiling radiantly in front of a church. The lady on the left is Margaret, your grandmother, Rachel pointed, and the one on the right is Dorothy Torres, my grandmother. They were best friends for 40 years. They went to church together, shopped together, and most importantly, they shared every secret. I went silent. I vaguely remembered the name Dorothy, a gentle woman who used to send me peppermint candies when I was a child. My grandma passed away 5 years ago, Rachel continued, voice sad. But before she died, she left me a box, instructing me only to open it when I was in big trouble involving the Bennetts, or when Sarah Bennett, you, came looking. Rachel pushed a brown leather notebook towards me, frayed at the corners. It looked like the kind of diary sold at cheap drugstores in the 90s. Grandma Margaret wasn't senile like your mom claimed, Rachel said, looking straight into my eyes. She knew everything. She knew your mom blocked the phone. She knew Emily lied, but she was old, Ms. Bennet. She was isolated in her own home, dependent on your mom for every meal, every pill. She knew if she made a scene, they would throw her in a nursing home or worse. My hand trembled as I touched the book. I opened the first page. The slanted, shaky, but painfully familiar handwriting of my grandmother appeared. May 12th, 2014. Patricia told me again today that Sarah doesn't want to talk to me. She said Sarah is busy hanging out with a new boyfriend, some drug addict. I know Patricia is lying. My Sarah is a good girl. She never forgets to call me on Sundays. But I have to pretend to believe. If I show suspicion, Patricia will cut the phone line in my room. My throat felt tight. I turned a few more pages. December 20th, 2016. Emily visited. She was sweet, complimented me, but her eyes kept glued to the safe. She asked if I had rewritten the will. I said yes, to keep the peace. But last night I wrote a holographic will. I tucked it inside the old Bible I gave Dorothy to keep. Patricia thinks I'm senile, but I'm sharper than they think. January 15th, 2019. Last entry. I'm very tired. I know I don't have much time left. I miss Sarah. I hope this diary reaches her. Sarah, if you read these lines, know that Grandma never believed them. I love you, my brave little bird. Take back what belongs to you. Dorothy will help you. My tears fell onto the page, blurring the word brave. For 19 years, I lived with the pain that the person I loved most had abandoned me. I built a successful life based on resentment and a desire to prove myself to people who didn't matter. But the truth lay here, in this frayed notebook. Grandma fought for me, in silence, right in the den of enemies. She played a longer game than my mother. She knew she couldn't win while alive, so she left weapons for me to use after she was gone. Why? I looked up at Rachel, voice breaking. Why wait until now? Grandma Dorothy kept her promise, Rachel explained. Mrs. Margaret said to only give it to you when you were ready to fight. When Emily sued me, and when I saw your name on the witness list, I knew the time had come. Mrs. Margaret didn't want you to receive this notebook when you were weak. She wanted you to have it when you were strong enough to use it like a sword. I closed the diary. The painful feeling vanished, replaced by a new strength. My coldness was no longer a defensive shell. It was absolute focus. I looked at Rachel Torres, the woman trembling with fear before my sister's power. Rachel, I said, voice low and solid. Call your lawyer. Tell her the plaintiff's witness just switched sides. And tell her to prepare the files. We're not just winning this lawsuit, we're going to bury them. Tomorrow is the trial. Emily wants a show? I'll give her a finale she'll never forget. The trial day arrived, bringing with it the chilly atmosphere characteristic of government buildings. King County Superior Court was noisy with footsteps and whispers, but inside courtroom 402, silence hung like a heavy curtain. I sat in the back row of the gallery, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and large sunglasses. From this position, I could observe the entire play my family had staged, and I had to admit, they prepared very thoroughly. Emily sat at the plaintiff's table. She wore a pale cream suit, the color of innocence and professionalism. Her hair was in a neat low bun, makeup light to highlight eyes that looked tired from anxiety. She didn't look like a workplace bully or a cruel sister. She looked like the perfect victim. Sitting right behind her was my mother, Patricia. She wore a navy blue silk dress, wearing the heirloom pearl necklace. She sat straight-backed, clutching a handkerchief, occasionally dabbing her dry eyes. She was playing the devoted mother, pained to see her daughter smeared. My father, Robert, sat next to her, shrinking inside an oversized suit, eyes on the floor as if looking for an emergency exit. Judge Patricia Coleman, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, banged the gavel to open the session. Emily's lawyer, a slick man named Miller, started with an eloquent speech. He painted a portrait of Emily as a rising star in marketing, an ambitious young woman ruined by the pathological jealousy of former employee Rachel Torres. Then, Emily was called to the witness stand. This was when the performance began. Her voice trembled at the right moments, hesitating during parts about losing her job, being shunned by friends because of Rachel's blog. "I worked so hard," Emily said, wiping a tear rolling down her cheek. "I considered Rachel a little sister. I just wanted to guide her. But she made up terrible things about me. She said I was a bully. Your Honor, I have never bullied anyone in my life. I was raised in a family full of love." Lawyer Miller nodded with satisfaction, then asked the closing question. "Ms. Bennett, in the blog, Defendant Torres mentioned you mistreated your biological sister. Can you clarify this?" Emily took a deep breath, turning to the jury with a face of utter misery. "That is what hurts me the most," she said, voice choking. "My sister Sarah, she ran away from home 19 years ago. She has psychological issues, always paranoid that everyone hates her. My parents and I tried our best to help her, but she refused. Wherever she is, I still always love and pray for her. Rachel exploiting my family tragedy to attack me is an inhumane act." In the gallery, a few people shook their heads in sympathy. My mom bowed her head, shoulders shaking as if sobbing. The perfect act. Emily had built herself a moral pedestal towering high. It was time to kick it over. Rachel's lawyer, Mrs. Webb, stood up. She was a petite woman, but exuded steel authority. She walked slowly toward the witness stand. "Ms. Bennett," Mrs. Webb began, voice calm. "You just stated under oath that you have never bullied anyone and you always loved your sister, correct?" "That is correct," Emily answered firmly. "And you claim your family always tried to contact and help Sarah Bennett, but she refused due to mental issues?" "Yes, exactly. She cut off all contact." Mrs. Webb smiled, a cold smile that made Emily frown slightly. "Your Honor," Mrs. Webb turned to Judge Coleman. "The defense requests permission to call a witness not on the original list. This person only agreed to testify this morning, and her presence is essential to completely refute the plaintiff's perjured testimony." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Who is it?" Mrs. Webb pointed to the doors at the back of the room. "The defense calls Ms. Sarah Bennett." The whole courtroom buzzed. I took off my sunglasses, left my hat on the seat, and stood up. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. I walked down the aisle between the rows of seats. The sound of my heels clicking on the wooden floor echoed steadily, sharp like the countdown of a time bomb. I saw my mother's face turn from rosy to sheet white. She opened her mouth, but no words came out, her hand gripping my dad's sleeve so hard her knuckles turned white. Emily looked like she was turned to stone on the witness stand. Her eyes went wide, the confidence and fake victimhood vanishing, replaced by naked terror. She looked at me like she was seeing a ghost rise from the grave. I walked past their table, not bothering to glance at my mother once. I walked straight to the witness stand, standing opposite my trembling sister. "Hello, Emily," I said softly, just enough for her to hear. "I'm back, and I'm not wheezing anymore." I was sworn in. Mrs. Webb didn't waste a second. "Ms. Bennett," Mrs. Webb asked, "can you tell the court why you cut off contact with your family 19 years ago?" "I didn't cut off contact," I replied, eyes staring straight at my mother. "I was erased, and I have proof that the love my sister just mentioned was actually a plan to steal assets spanning 2 decades. Mrs. Webb held up an old notebook high. "Your Honor, I wish to submit Evidence A, the personal diary of Mrs. Margaret Bennett, grandmother of the plaintiff and witness, with authenticated handwriting." Emily collapsed into her chair. She knew that notebook. She knew what Grandma had seen. And she knew Her show had just ended right when it had barely begun. The silence in the courtroom wasn't peaceful. It was the quiet before the storm. As Grandma Margaret's diary entries appeared on the projector screen, along with the undeniable handwriting analysis report, Emily's face shifted from horror to desperation. She jumped up, screaming in the middle of the court, "That's a fabrication! She was old! She was senile! She faked it! Order!" Judge Coleman banged the gavel, the sound cracking like a gunshot. She looked at Emily over her reading glasses, a sharp gaze containing the contempt a seasoned judge reserves for liars. "Ms. Bennett, you just committed perjury in my court, and based on the video and email evidence authenticated by forensics, I find the only senility here belongs to your memory of your own actions." The verdict came that very afternoon, swift and brutal. Judge Coleman declared Rachel Torres the winner. The court recognized that what Rachel wrote on her blog was substantially true. Under US law, truth is an absolute defense against defamation allegations. Emily didn't just lose the case, she was ordered to pay all of Rachel's legal fees, amounting to $42,000. The woman who spent 19 years taking things that didn't belong to her now for the first time had to dig into her pocket to pay for her own cruelty. But that was just the first crack in the dam. When the dam breaks, the floodwaters take everything. Because the evidence was submitted in open court, it became public record. A local reporter sitting in the courtroom caught the story. That evening, the video "Marketing Director Laughs While Sister Dies" went viral on social media. The next morning, Emily went to work, but her keycard didn't work. The building security handed her a cardboard box of personal items and an envelope. Inside was immediate termination for violation of core code of conduct and causing severe damage to brand image. No company wants their marketing director to be someone cursed by the entire internet for bullying a disabled sister and manipulating the elderly. The career Emily built by stepping on heads collapsed in just 24 hours. Next came her perfect marriage. Emily's husband, Mark, was a decent but weak man who had always believed the crazy sister story Emily spun. But when Mark watched that video, seeing with his own eyes his wife laughing while I writhed, and read the emails Emily plotted with Mom to deceive Grandma, the velvet curtain fell. Mark realized the woman he slept with every night wasn't human, but a monster in human skin. Divorce papers were served 3 days later. Mark fought for full custody and demanded a strict division of assets. And the final blow, the most painful one, came from the probate court. With Grandma's diary and the email archive as evidence, my lawyer petitioned to contest Margaret Bennett's will based on undue influence. The law is very clear. If a beneficiary uses lies, isolation, and psychological manipulation to force an elderly person to change their will, that will is void. The investigation took 6 months, but the result was determined the moment those emails were exposed. The court ruled to annul Emily's inheritance rights and reinstate Grandma's original intent. Assets were split equally, and the majority of the cash went to me as restitution. Emily was forced to repay the $180,000 in cash she had received and spent. She had no money left. She had used that money for a down payment on a lakefront villa to show off on Instagram. Now, to pay that money back to me, she was forced to fire sale her dream house, sell her luxury car, and sell the designer items she used to build her shell of success. I remember the day I received the restitution check from the court. I didn't feel joy. I just felt a cold balance. Emily lost everything she defined as her self-worth: money, fame, and the admiration of others. She returned to zero, naked and ugly, just like her true nature. She had to move, back into my parents' basement, the house that was no longer a fortress of pride, but a tomb burying the honor of the entire Bennett family. But if Emily lost her future, my mother, Patricia, lost her past, and the hollow honor she valued more than her child's life. And her downfall, in a way, was much more satisfying. If Emily lost her future, my mother, Patricia Bennett, lost the only thing she worshipped for 60 years, the respect of others. The first Sunday after the trial, my mother still went to St. Jude Church as usual. This had been her kingdom for 3 decades. She was the head of the charity committee, the organizer of fundraising tea parties, the model woman always sitting in the front row with a rosary in hand. She thought God, or at least the pastor, would be on her side. She believed the reputation she built was so solid that no scandal could knock it down. But she forgot one thing. The ladies of the church guild have a lot of free time, and they all have smartphones. When my mother walked into the sanctuary, the usual noisy chatter suddenly died out. It wasn't the silence of reverence. It was the silence of disgust. Hundreds of eyes fixed on her. The friends who used to drink tea with her every Thursday afternoon now turned their faces away, pretending to adjust their scarves or whispering loudly to their neighbors. My mother kept her head high, walking toward her usual seat, but as she was about to sit, Mrs. Alice, her closest friend for 20 years, placed her handbag on that empty spot. Mrs. Alice didn't look at my mother, saying just loud enough for those around to hear, "This seat is for someone with a conscience, Patricia, not for someone who watches their child die." That was the first knife. The second knife came from Pastor Thomas after the service. He invited my mother into his office. With a regretful but firm face, he announced that the church council had held an emergency meeting. They decided to suspend all her positions. No more fundraising, no more leading the choir. "The congregation is very unsettled," the pastor said, avoiding her eyes. "They watched that video, Patricia. And they read the emails you wrote about manipulating Mrs. Margaret. The church cannot let a person with such behavior represent the community." My mother staggered out of the church. Her perfect world had collapsed. No more praise, no more admiration. Only naked contempt remained. 3 weeks later, she came to my apartment. I watched through the security camera. The woman standing at the door no longer had the air of nobility. Her hair was messy, roots showing gray because she didn't have the mind to go to the salon. She wore a rumpled coat, eyes puffy. I opened the door, but left the security chain on. I stood there, looking at her through the narrow crack like looking at a bothersome solicitor. "Sarah," she sobbed, hand clutching the doorframe. "Let me in. I beg you. Your dad won't talk to me anymore. Emily just screams, in the basement all day. I'm so lonely." "What do you want, Patricia?" I asked, not using mom. "I want to explain," she said quickly, tears streaming down, blurring her hastily applied makeup. "You misunderstood. I did everything for the family. Emily. She is weaker than you. You are strong, Sarah. You could always take care of yourself. I just wanted to ensure Emily had some capital to live. I didn't expect things to go this far." I laughed, a dry sound. Until the very end, she was still using the old tactic, gaslighting. She was trying to turn her cruelty into noble sacrifice. "You weren't protecting anyone," I said, voice icy. "I read the email you sent in 2008. You wrote, 'Have to make Sarah look crazy, otherwise Grandma Margaret will leave the house to her.' That's not protecting the weak. That is calculated robbery." "Mom." She choked on words, then switched to begging. "We can start over. I'll go to therapy with you. We are family. Blood is thicker than water, Sarah." I looked at her, and for the first time in 19 years, I felt no pain, no anger. I only felt pity. Pity for a woman who sold her soul for a picture of a perfect family, only to end up drowning in its ashes. "Family?" I asked back. "Family are people who lift each other up when they fall, Patricia. And you are the one who kicked the inhaler away when your daughter was suffocating. You are not my family. You are just the unlucky woman who gave birth to me. Sarah, please. She reached through the crack, trying to touch me. I stepped back, hand gripping the door. You spent 19 years erasing me from your life. I said my final words. Congratulations, Patricia, you succeeded. I'm vanishing. I slammed the door. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home, click, click, sounded like the closing of a coffin lid on this relationship. Outside in the hall, I heard her screaming my name. But in my apartment, I only heard the air purifier humming softly. I took a deep breath. The air had never been so fresh. I owed them nothing. The best revenge isn't harming them, but letting them live with the consequences they created, while I live the happy life they tried to steal. That night, I slept the best sleep of my life. My mother's silence behind the door that day was the period at the end of the maternal sentence. But the aftershocks of the lawsuit hadn't stopped. A month later, as the maple leaves in Portland began to turn fiery red, I received a handwritten letter sent from Seattle. No sender name, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Sharp, spiky strokes, pressed hard into the paper, leaving indentations on the back. It was Emily's writing. She wrote 6 full pages. I brewed a cup of tea, sat by the window, and read it like a psychopathology report. Emily didn't apologize. Through 6 pages, there wasn't a single sorry that meant repentance. Instead, it was a negotiation full of justification and blame. She wrote, "You won. Are you happy? You took everything from me. Mark left and took the kids. I lost my job. I had to sell the house. Now I'm living in Mom and Dad's basement, the place where you used to hide. Do you think that's fair? I'm Mom's victim just like you. Mom made me do it. Mom said I had to play the perfect child. I was just a kid." And the concluding sentence made me laugh out loud in the empty room. If you have any conscience left, please write a public post saying we have reconciled. I need a family reunion story to apply for a new job. You owe me that for destroying my reputation. That was Emily. Even when drowning, she still tried to climb on someone else's shoulders to breathe. She didn't see my pain. She only saw her own inconvenience. For narcissists like Emily, the world only exists to serve their script. I didn't tear the letter. I didn't burn it either. I folded it, put it in an envelope, and wrote on it, "Return to sender, no reply." I sent it back intact. That was the cruelest answer. Absolute silence. I gave her no emotional fuel to continue playing the victim, but the email I received 2 days later carried a completely different tone. The subject line was just 3 words. To my daughter. Unfamiliar email address, probably set up hastily from a coffee shop to avoid Mom's control. It was my dad, Robert Bennett. The man who sat on the sofa, eyes glued to the TV while I scratched the carpet for air 19 years ago. The man who was silent at every meal while Mom mocked my weight. The man who always avoided my eyes whenever I begged for help. His email was brief. No flowery language, no excuses. Sarah, I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm writing this only to confirm one thing you probably suspected. I knew everything. I knew your mother blocked the acceptance letters. I knew Emily stole your money to buy clothes. I knew Mrs. Margaret tried to call you many times, but your mother unplugged the phone. I knew, and I did nothing. I told myself that keeping peace in the house was more important than the truth. I lied to myself that you were strong, you would endure. But the truth is, I am a coward. I feared your mother's anger more than I feared my daughter being hurt. I chose my own comfort over my daughter's life. The night you had the asthma attack, I heard your wheezing. I was about to stand up. But then I sat back down. That is the sin that will haunt me until I die. You were right to leave this house. Never come back. I'm sorry for being a failed father. I read that email 3 times. The first time, I felt wild rage. His admission proved I wasn't just attacked by villains but betrayed by the protector. In nature, a mother beast might eat her young, but would the father stand and watch? The second time, I felt disgust at his weakness. But the third time, a strange feeling appeared. Relief. Finally, after 19 years of being gaslit, told I was paranoid, oversensitive, crazy. Finally, someone from that house confirmed my reality. I wasn't crazy. What I felt was real. The cruelty was real. And the abandonment was intentional. He gave me a gift more precious than any apology: validation. I typed a reply, fingers moving decisively. Mr. Robert, thank you for this late honesty. It is the only kind thing you ever did for me. I do not forgive you. Your cowardice almost killed me, literally and figuratively, but I accept this confession. You are right. You failed. And your punishment is to live the rest of your life in that house, next to the wife you fear and the monster daughter your silence helped create. That is the prison you built yourself. Do not contact me again. I died the night you didn't stand up. I hit send. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the gray Portland sky turning purple at sunset. I didn't feel sad. I felt like I had just put down a 1,000-pound rock I had been carrying since I was 17. Emily is imprisoned by greed. Mom is imprisoned by vanity. Dad is imprisoned by cowardice. And me? I am free. I stood up, walked to the bookshelf where I kept Grandma Margaret's photo. It was time to close this dark chapter and open the true legacy she left for me. 6 months after the trial ended, the inheritance redistribution process finally concluded. A check for $182,000 arrived at my office on a misty morning typical of Seattle. That was the money Emily was forced to repay after fire-selling her dream house and liquidating her entire designer wardrobe. To Emily, this number was humiliation, proof of pathetic failure. But to me, holding that thin piece of paper, I didn't see money. I saw recognition. I sat for a long time in my office, looking out at the gray city skyline. I could use this money to buy a new car, travel around the world, or simply put it in savings. But every time I thought about spending it on myself, I remembered the image of Grandma Margaret sitting writing her diary in the dark, fighting alone to protect me when I had no idea. This money didn't belong to me. It belonged to the justice she spent the last years of her life preserving. So, I didn't keep a dime. I used the entire amount to establish the Margaret Bennett Fund. It's a small nonprofit with a specific mission: providing emergency financial aid to adults trying to escape financial control and psychological abuse from family. We pay for rental deposits, initial legal fees, and most importantly, therapy costs for people who have been made to believe by their families that they are crazy, useless. Grandma couldn't save me from that house at 17, but now, through her legacy, we are helping dozens of others find a way out. Every time I sign a support decision, I feel like I'm sending a hug from her to the invisible kids out there. Tonight I returned to my apartment as night fell. I threw open the balcony doors. Cold wind rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and pine needles. I took a deep breath. My lungs filled with air. No wheezing, no tightness, no fear. On my desk, the rescue inhaler still lay there, covered in a thin layer of dust. I didn't throw it away, but I no longer needed it as an inseparable item. For 19 years, I thought I couldn't breathe because of sickness. But now I understand. I couldn't breathe because I lived too long under their suffocating shadow. When that shadow vanished, I finally learned how to breathe. Next to the inhaler was the manuscript of the book I just finished, titled The Invisible Daughter. I opened the first page where I wrote the dedication I had cherished for years. To Grandma Margaret, who saw me when I couldn't see myself. And to everyone waiting to be seen. It's your turn. My story began with desperate gasps on a cold floor, but it ends with this peaceful silence. I don't forgive Mom, I don't forgive Dad, and I certainly don't forgive Emily. Forgiveness is not required for healing. Sometimes healing comes from accepting the truth, letting go of the expectation that they will change, and building a new family from people who truly cherish you. Erica, Rachel, and my dedicated staff, they are my family. Family isn't defined by blood. Family is defined by hands ready to catch you when you fall into the abyss, not the people standing by and laughing. If my story touched you, if you are sitting in the dark, hearing these words and feeling like I'm telling your life story, then listen closely. The confusion you feel is not weakness. The pain you carry is not dramatization. And the cruel patterns you notice in your family, they are real. Don't let them convince you that you are crazy. Don't let them erase your existence. Trust your intuition. Document everything. Find people who believe you. And when the time comes, and I promise you, that time will come, stand up and use your voice. You are not invisible. You were never invisible. You are just in a room with blind people. Walk out of that room. The world out there is waiting to see you shine. Thank you for listening to my journey. Sarah Bennett. If this story gave you strength, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? And what did you do to find your voice again? Share your story. You never know if your comment might save someone desperately reading it at 3 a.m. See you in the next stories, where justice always finds its way home, no matter how late.